What was it? You used a big word. What was the word?
You're an impresario.
What is that?
It's someone who puts their face on billboards and t-shirts in order to...
Yeah. Is that really what that is? Yeah. I was an impresario until I met my wife.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to EarthX, the Sustainable C-Suite, a live conversation series that focuses on leaders in business, investment, and philanthropy that are driving environmental progress. Tonight, we're joined with Healy. Healy is a well-known real estate impresario who built one of the fastest-growing brokerages in North Texas. And 4 years ago, he pivoted to launch Morrison Seger Venture Capital Partners, initially raising $5 million and scaling that to a portfolio of around $100 million in various investments, specifically in consumer brands and early-stage founders. And all of them, what I find interesting, has that he's really good at finding brands with a story, with authenticity, and cultural pull. And, at EarthX, one of the things we like to highlight is the ways in which both consumer behavior and culture can be driving forces in market-based environmental solutions and sustainability strategies. So we'll be getting into that tonight. But thanks, Roger, so much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it.
What was it? You used a big word. What was the word?
You're an impresario.
What is that?
It's someone who puts their face on billboards and t-shirts in order to...
Yeah. Is that really what that is? Yeah. I was an impresario until I met my wife. And then now I'm a anti-impresario.
Well, unfortunately, I want to start with one of those stories because I think it does talk about your background and your approach to business, your sort of, and the way you look at that, ways in which culture and marketing and promotion can kind of be a strategy for looking at success. And that's the really kind of a simple question: how did your name end up on a T-shirt being worn by Britney Spears?
I know that's why we're all here tonight. So it's funny. So and to bring it back to kind of your background with D Magazine and DCO, D Magazine has been very kind to me with the venture capital stuff. It took a while. I got into real estate in 2001, and in the real estate world, on the residential side, you work to become a D Magazine best realtor. And it took me like 16 years to get it. And I was a top 5 realtor from year 0 till 16. And then finally I was like, all right, here I am. But on the venture side, they've been super kind. And to your question, to play off it, they just had an article come out about me yesterday that I was very proud. And the first line was, Healy has finally grown up. I was like, what? Which maybe it's true, but the Britney Spears thing, which you all probably know the term going viral. I went viral before it was a thing, in large part because of just kind of my ignorance and how I'm here. I met Trammell dancing to a monkey song at a party, and he was like, I'm Trammell. I was like, oh my gosh, like Trammell Crow. He's like, I am Trammell Crow. I was like, no way. I was like, I love the monkeys. And it's just kind of been, my calling card. I lived in LA for a while after college, and I tried to do the acting thing, and I didn't know what I was doing, but it frankly sounded cool. At the time, Ashton Kutcher was really popular, and I grew my hair out and got a trucker hat and moved to LA and just kind of navigated and made friends just innocently and ignorantly. And my 2 best girlfriends there, you live in LA or Nashville, like everyone has an agenda. They all have a story. But my 2 best girlfriends there, one of them was like, my cousin is a singer. And the other girl said, my dad is a singer. I'm like, you know what? Like, sure. Right. Like, sure. They didn't have social media. Their last names didn't really resonate with me. I was not an impresario yet. But anyway, fast forward, I quit acting, cause I did nothing and I was a failure. And I came home, and the Mavericks historically were terrible. And then right when I got home, it was like the Dirk and Steve Nash days, and it was like fun to go to the games, and they were brandable. And Cuban was, he was just doing his thing, which was so fun to watch. And when the Mavericks made their first like real run in the playoffs, you leave, and in the parking lot, people are selling, like the one-off T-shirts that it's like and maybe Mavericks is spelled wrong, but it's $8 instead of 50. And there was a guy selling a shirt that said, Dirk is my homeboy. And I was like, and it was like Dirk kind of as Jesus. And I was like, that's really clever. I bought one, and I had this idea because on the residential side of things, especially when I got into it, it was not like, it wasn't cool to be a realtor. Like what's up?
What's up?
What's up? You too. You became a realtor because you either wanted to work with your mom or you couldn't find another job. And I couldn't find another job. So I was like, I'll just do this and I'll hit the ground running, and maybe it'll parlay into something else. But my brain has always gravitated towards marketing and to trends and to consumer products and to stuff that it's like speaks to you, right? Like it's a consumer product. It speaks to you, and you build an audience, like a musician, right? The Monkees, like Trammell and I both like the Monkees. We sang the monkey song. You can't fake it. So I said, screw it. One, if I make fun of myself first, it's not as fun for you to make fun of me. Two, I'm going to try to make being a residential real estate agent like cool and fun. And I'm going to make my name at the time, a brand, and I'm going to put it on a walking billboard, which at the time was a t-shirt. And so I designed this thing with a couple of my buddies, and it said Rogers Healy is my realtor. And I put it was like a smiling house on it. This is a long story, but it's funny and it's interesting. But it kind of set me up for a lot of things. Anyway, got the t-shirts printed on an expensive shirt at the time called American Apparel. Spent like $18 a shirt. I bought like 7 of them, sent them to my friends in LA, and that was it. I was like, all right, not a real big return on the investment. I think I spent $250, which was a lot of money at the time. And then my mom called me like 3 months later. She's like, put it on Entertainment Tonight. I was like, why? She's like, just do it. Britney Spears has lost her mind and is driving around Hollywood, blah, 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 shaving her head and having, unfortunately, very bad thoughts. Rogers Healy is my realtor. I was like, holy crap. And so I immediately went into, at the time I'd been an agent for a couple of years. I was making money, but, it was not a sustainable, no pun intended, career. I was like, screw it. I know Britney Spears fans are psycho obsessed. This was like before Lady Gaga, Taylor Swift. It was Britney Spears. So I set up an e-commerce shop, and I sold almost $1 million worth of t-shirts in a couple of weeks, which is how I bought my first house. But I still have not met Britney Spears, but I was smart enough with the press, which kind of put me on a path to being able to do stuff like this, where they would call me, be like, "Are you dating Britney Spears?" I'm like, "Oh, y'all know I can't talk about that." And then the t-shirt ended up becoming, I have it framed somewhere at my house now, but at one point in my life, the coolest moment was I was in People's Style Watch. It's like, can you grab the Rogers Healy as my realtor t-shirt? I was like, this is so crazy. I've never met her. And then I finally realized that one of the 2 girls that I was best friends with, who said her cousin was a singer, her cousin's Britney Spears. And so that was like the first part. And then back to music and how music has just changed my life. And it's my whole life revolves around it. I love the Eagles. We have our oldest daughter is named Henley after Don Henley. I am the biggest Eagles fan on planet Earth. If anyone in here is friends with Don Henley, I would love a group text. 2 years later, my friend Lucy calls me. She's like, hey, my dad is in town for a concert. I was like, what? Why? She's like, yeah, he's playing at this Crossroads Guitar Festival with B.B. King and Eric Clapton and John Mayer. I was like, the last name is Walsh. I was like, who's your dad? She said, Joe Walsh. I was like, oh, the Eagles? I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. You want a t-shirt? So yeah, it just kind of started this path where, investing and networking and being, a self-promoter, an impresario, if you will, I will. At first it was fun because it was just this world that was unknown to me. And I went from being just like the nice guy that was harmless and, not a threat to people like talking about me. And at first it was like awesome. It was it was dopamine. And then people started like talking negatively and making fun of me. And it like started to it hurt. And so I did what every logical person would do is I put my face on billboards and, which is the whole other thing. So anyway, the Britney Spears thing, it catapulted my career, but I had to work through a rebrand multiple times because, that really attracted to 21-year-olds renting an apartment at SMU. And then maybe they bought their first condo and then they wanted to work with like the well-respected agent. And so I had to, kind of dial down the marketing and do stuff that was, more in line with what is traditional in my own way of it. But it taught me a ton. And I was 24 years old, went from making no money to a little bit. And it kind of changed my life. And I've still never met Britney Spears. My favorite song that Britney Spears sings is Lucky. I think it's a great song. Early morning, she wakes up. Anyway, that's a long-winded answer, but that's the story.
No, it's amazing. And if anyone knows,
I'll be like, oh, okay, we heard of Britney Spears.
There we go. Get up and go.
Yeah.
No, but what I see is the through line there and being able to be responsive to a cultural trend, responsive to some sort of, pressure point in consumer demand that it seems like it fuels the way you look at brands that you invest in. And I guess, take us from that real estate background into how you got into venture capital and what the sort of philosophy has been and how it relates to that kind of
Yeah, I'll answer it kind of out of order. So one of kind of our tenets at the company, and Alexander from our team is here. My firm is called Morrison, Seger Venture Capital Partners. I kind of started it as a joke. My buddy, I love music, and he's like, "You'll get a kick out of this." My friend started a company called Winwood Collins, and I was like, "Steve Winwood, Phil Collins." Sidebar: our two youngest kids, Collins and Winwood now, and our oldest is Henley. And I go, "What is Winwood Collins?" He's like, "It's nothing. It just sounds cool." It's like, "That's amazing. I'm going to start Morrison Seger tomorrow and name it after Jim Morrison, Van Morrison, and Bob Seger." And then, God had a plan that kind of evolved into this. But one of the things we don't invest in are like trends, right? I think that there's stuff that you see, whether it's, when frozen yogurt shops pop up, or a fidget spinner, or, the carb craze or the no carb craze. That stuff kind of scares me. But I'm a very simple person. And I think that, again, with real estate, being a residential agent and building like not a fan club, but like a following, it's still comical, right? And people ask me like, it's like anyone can do it, right? It's just, you got to know how to talk to the people that want to hear your message. The problem is that most people are too afraid to deal with the chatter. But I noticed this, and over the course of time, I was really fortunate and really blessed to grow something that kind of revolved around me, right? Earth. I was the earth. And I thought that's what you were supposed to be like as a leader. And yeah, in this article, it talked about it very, it was really accurate. It just was so lonely. And the turnover in the agency side is so significant. But my superpower, I thought, and I think, is finding talent. And so I knew early on, I was like, I can't go recruit a top producing agent at a company that y'all have probably worked with or about. In large part because I was 25, they literally knew me as the guy that had the t-shirt, and they didn't think I was a real competitor. And so I was like, screw it. I'll go to the coffee shop. I'll go to a different one every day. I'll go to a different restaurant every day. I'll valet park, even though I don't have the money to do it. And every time someone like gives me that feeling, I'll be like, "Hey, I think you'd be a great agent. I'm going to pay for you to get your license. Trust me." And they would do it, and we would grow. And then those people would get confident and they would make money. And Rogers, you changed my life. And then all of a sudden, text message, "Thanks for everything. I got a call from the company that wouldn't interview me 6 months ago." And I just kind of kept fighting through that. And it was fine because at the time, when your ego is here and like logic is here, like this will usually win. And, over the course of time, I was really lonely, and it lived in the back of my head. And my escape, other than music, was investing. There's a guy, if y'all have heard of Mizzen in Maine, it's a men's clothing company that was founded here. I'm not going to go the Britney Spears length of the story, but the founder, I became friends with him when he was a freshman in college, and in a roundabout way became his mentor. And like, he's my mentor now. And he approached me. This was before Shark Tank was on. And he's like, "I have this idea to start a men's dress shirt company." I was like, "That's cool." And he's like, "Do you want to invest?" I was like, "I do." That was my diligence. I was like, "It's a cool name. Like, do I get a free shirt? 50% off." I'm in. And it changed my life. And I didn't realize the odds were stacked so far against the company and me to make it past, 6 months, much less 14 years. But it became the fastest growing apparel company in the history of North America at the time. And it changed my life. And I put in what at the time was a lot of money for me. And through that, I, did the networking thing. I bring the shirts to people. This time it was just a plain shirt. It didn't have my logo on it. And word kind of got out, and people would knock on my door, be like, "Hey, I'm starting a beverage company or a belt company." And, it was at the time gut instinct, which that is a trend, and that is investing, and that is really consumer investing, is really feeling like, can you get behind it? And then right before COVID, I had looked up and I was an investor in probably 100 companies. And I just figured if you invest, like, knock on wood, they work. And they were all still alive. I was like, that's normal. And then I started watching Shark Tank, and I'm on a show now called Entrepreneur Elevator Pitch. And I started studying these shows. And I was like, the statistics are like, I'm reading a different book, right? I was like, all right, maybe I'm kind of decent at this, but I shied away from actually going all in. Met my wife, which I'll land the plane. My wife is the happiest person I've ever met. Very joyful and just exudes peace. And I was like, I was jealous of that. We went on our first date 6 years before our second, which that's Podcast After Dark. We'll do that one. But to the billboard and kind of to what my evolution was. Our first date, and obviously she knows me now, but I'm sure like everyone, she thought I was just this cocky prick because I would self-promote, had my face on 40 billboards at a time all over the town. And it served a purpose, but it came with crap. The first date we went on, my wife is very private, like has a private Instagram, which sounds ridiculous, but she just doesn't care. And we sit down for a beer. And I'm like, son of a bitch. My billboard is behind me. And so I was like, I swear to you, this was not on purpose. And she was like, yeah. So one beer turned into a half a beer, turned into 6 years later, I promise you, I'm not that guy. But it led me to being able to have an eye for talent. Right. And that's kind of to your question is investing in consumer products. It's super expensive. It's super competitive. But if you believe in it, you know, and you get a team like us behind you, like you're going to win. And like, that's not my ego talking. That is like just this such strong conviction as to the same thing I would find someone at a restaurant or a valet stand or selling cars. Like, hey, I promise you, you're good at this. And they are all still doing it, not for the most part at my firms, but that started it. And all the stuff that I didn't think I knew and all the stuff I didn't think I was qualified to do really just revolved around me being my own worst enemy. Like whether it's finance or how to actually do proper diligence. We started doing it. And then I looked up and I was like, huh, I think I'm gonna do this full time. And then COVID hit, right? Which sucked. It was a scary time. A lot of people lost their lives. We were locked up. My wife has a bunch of health issues. But it was just kind of one of those moments where God was just talking to me and said, you got to do this. And my problem that I experienced is that I didn't have the proper setup of my real estate companies to really go all in, but I still went all in and I don't regret it. Yeah, the stuff that we like doing, it is sustainable. It is better for you. And I know that's why we're here.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because there's so many of your brands that do have, you know, sustainability baked into their model. And, you know, I'm wondering to what extent is that we're seeing a trend where new consumer brands need to have a sustainability story as part of their marketing and messaging? And to what extent is that part of your sort of ethos as an investor to find those products and those opportunities that, I mean, you're holding the path water, which I think we can talk about in more detail, but just, is that part of what you're looking for?
100%. And again, like as you mature in life and as God gives you opportunities to grow, you know, better for you now is like, it's a thing, right? You can't say I'm better for you. Oh God, you know, probably don't shave your armpits. Which I don't shave mine. But it wasn't like normal conversation, right? Like 6 years ago, if someone would have said, you know what, I just stopped drinking, I'd be like, oh my gosh, you okay? I said, no, I just decided to stop drinking, right? I think that's normal. And for me, my thrust into it was being a parent. And our oldest daughter, who's almost 4, she's fine, but we came home and just assumed it was going to be normal life. And then we can't have dairy in the house for 6 months. We can't have soy products in the house for 6 months. And then, you know, that has kind of been a thing with our other kids too. And my wife, we invested in a laundry detergent company called Laundry Sauce, and I'm loyal to it, but we can't use it, right? Because it's got some fragrance in there that we can't have it around our kids. And so my wife at the initial was like, man, what is all this hippie stuff? And she's like, no, we got to do this. We got rid of our plastic cups. We got rid of single-use plastics. And then, you know, these things kind of started popping up where better for you really is a mindset, right? I mean, but there's also a way to make it part of your ethos as an investor. And, you know, I think moderation and the better for you movement are relatively one and the same, where like even with caffeine, right? Like we're in an energy drink company called Goat Fuel, and it's got caffeine, but it doesn't have as much as a Monster, right? It's got sweetener, but it's got sucralose instead of the bad stuff. And so, you know, there's ways to do it where we're not just hardcore only investing in stuff like this, where this is a very extreme example and it's extremely successful. But it has changed kind of it's changed the whole company. And I think that also finding founders and leaders that take care of themselves is unfortunately really rare. And I think that's a big part of the investment in itself is you get in bed with these people until someone kicks you out of bed. And you got to make sure these are people that are getting after it. And I've got my own quirky way of doing diligence, and they're like, oh, I don't work on the weekends. Oh, I said, well, it's nice to meet you, right? It's like, you know, you're a founder. You got people's money behind you. So yeah, but it's hard, but it has been pretty incredible. It's been pretty incredible to see like dry January become dry all year, right? And then like anything, like right now there's a huge boom, obviously with AI, and we get probably 50, 60 inbound deals a day. 2-3 years ago, the big inbound thing was pickleball, which you can hold your thoughts on that. I will too. But now it's all AI. But every once in a while, it's, we're in a vodka company that's vodka, but it's lower proof vodka, right? Where it's like, it's kind of targeted towards females that can have a martini and not, feel like crap the next day. There's a lot of stuff we're in that's no alcohol, but we still are in a tequila brand, right? So it's moderation, but the people that gravitate towards the extreme, as far as the better for you movement, it's here. And it's,
well, I want to talk about Path because it's it's a water company that has a reusable bottle, and you think there's something counterintuitive about that from a business perspective. Yeah. You want people to use your product, throw it out, and buy more product, but they created a product that you can keep using. Yeah. When you evaluate that from a business perspective, I mean, what are the considerations? How do you justify the investment, knowing that they're selling something that you hopefully can only buy one of?
Yeah. So it's funny. I passed on this like 4 years ago, and we're investors as of about a year ago, and it's doing really, really well. If y'all haven't seen this, it's called Path Water. It's a guy, my dad's from Pakistan, the founder's from the Middle East. We had a cool connection on that front. And he had this idea just to have in like this single use plastic term to people outside of this room that are like, that was not a thing 5 years ago, but he saw the trends, right? But he's also smart enough to know that if I do this, like I can, the bottle dents, it's not a Yeti cup, right? The goal is to have people drink out of this 2 to 3 times. They mark how many times they did it and they recycle it, right? Then they become loyal to the brand. But I tell people, Path, there's water in here, but it's not a water company, right? This is a movement company. It's a marketing company, and their mode is the fact that their largest investor is the company that makes the mold for this, but also the world's largest water distributor. And so they've got really cool relationships, but like with Liquid Death, which I'm sure y'all are familiar with, I was early in Liquid Death. And, at first people are like, oh, Liquid Death. It's like, no, it's called Liquid Death because it's death to plastic, right? So even if you hate the branding and how extreme it was when it first came out, and it was a loud brand, it still is. But at the time, 10% of the profits went to clean up ocean pollution waste. So like, you can't hate it, right? It's actually making the world a better place, but it's water, right? And so if it can start with water, there's so many other verticals that can be disrupted. And I think this has just been low hanging fruit, but the brand is, to do $100 million in revenue next year, which is pretty awesome. And they have partnerships with the Mavericks and with the Stars and with SpongeBob SquarePants, right? It's like, it's cool to drink water. But to your point, like, yeah, you drink it maybe 1 or 2 times, and that's the fear. But people like the idea of maybe collecting these things and then buying a new one. Lastly, if you've been to the American Airlines Center in the last couple months, they have it there. But the irony is that they give it to you at the counter, and then before you go to your seat, they have to pour it into a plastic cup. It's like, oh, what am I? We went to the Bryan Adams concert a few weeks ago, my wife and I was like, I finally get to see the Path. And they go, sir, cup. And I was like, what? I was like, defeats the purpose, right? They're afraid you're going to throw it on stage or something. But yeah, stuff like this, we love it, right? And I will tell you that it's not obnoxious yet with inbound. It's not an obnoxious amount of founders trying to raise money, because I think they're trying to figure out, like, is this considered a better for you brand, right? If it's a female founded brand that's better for you, how do you qualify it? So I think that's here, but I think it's a good thing that it's not a trend, right? To a question you asked a little bit ago, it's not something that's going to come and go. And you all probably are familiar with the big AI companies, which are obviously going to be safe, but there probably is a boom, right? And if you followed like finance and fundraising online, these companies are raising like 70, 80, hundreds of millions of dollars. And like, what? It's crazy. But I think this is kind of the tortoise, and the better for you thing is here. And it's not crazy to use the term longevity anymore. And it's not crazy to think that we could be the first generation ever where it's not abnormal to live to be 120 or 130 years old. And it's all how you treat your body now. And so if it starts with something like this, and you see the statistics and you see the difference, it's going to make the world just a better place in general.
Well, it's interesting that framing, because I think a lot of conversations around environment and environmental action and progress is, you think about energy, you think about infrastructure, but like when you talk about the laundry product, or also freaks of nature, these are products that are selling themselves. The branding's really around being better for your body, being better for yourself. But baked into that is this idea that they're better for the planet too, and there's an alignment there with health and wellness and environment.
Yeah, freaks of nature. It's not my nickname. I wish. It's a sunscreen company we're at. And a lot of stuff we're in, it's celebrity backed, and there's no such thing as a uncancelable celebrity, but there's probably the ones you're like, all right, like there's a guy named Kelly Slater who's the Michael Jordan of surfing, and
That's an understatement. He's the greatest surfer
Yeah.
that's ever lived. Yeah.
Okay, well there we go. It's sunscreen, right? Which it means you're going to be in the sun. You're still going to subject your body to potential getting poisoned, but sunscreen protects you, right? So it's like vodka. You're drinking, but you're drinking lower proof vodka. Not that that's a true comp, but I saw Freaks of Nature before it was even a thing, and I was like, I get it. It's sunscreen, right? And the bottle is made out of recyclable plastic, and it's a better for you. It's sunscreen, which protects you from getting obviously skin cancer, but their branding was clean, it was mature, and it wasn't too crazy, but it's also expensive. Where you'd think that in some of these things, like, this bottle this is in 70,000 locations in the U.S. alone, every airport in North America. LaGuardia or Jackson Hole or Aspen, this is going to cost you $7 or $8, right? You go to 7-Eleven, it's going to cost you $3.50. So it's more expensive than an Evian or an Ozarka or Dasani, but people are willing to spend a little bit more knowing that they're helping themselves and they're helping the world. And it's the same thing, I think, with these consumer products too, is that sunscreen is never going to be something that you can't afford if the economy takes a dive, but, maybe you adjust. But these are luxury price point items, but not luxury like a Mercedes or the Ritz-Carlton. It's just 10 or 15% higher for something that you need. And I think people can justify that. And that's why I think these are better investments.
Well, you've been successful being able to spot trends. Going back to your original story, I'm curious just as we wrap up, sort of, where do you see the outlook of where consumer products are in terms of the ability to continue to kind of make them work better for people, for the planet, and especially given sort of macroeconomic kind of winds that we're facing at the time?
Sure. Yeah, it's crazy. First of all, I think that every day we're waking up like, oh, okay, the stock market's probably going to be at an all-time high again, and like interest rates are okay. Like what gives? I don't even think we've started to get at the tip of the iceberg with stuff like this. And I think that once people get more educated, and social media is, it's catch-22, right? It has kind of helped build my career. It's also been, it's poison, but I think social media is also an incredible educator for all demographics. And we're seeing stuff like this and the sunscreen company become, front facing. And I think that's going to spur a whole new layer of entrepreneurs, our age, young age, older than us, et cetera, that actually want to see the difference. We're in a protein bar, like a snack bar we introduced yesterday, and it's founded by Patrick Schwarzenegger and Maria Shriver. And they started it in large part because their family has had a history of Alzheimer's and dementia. And so they wanted to start the very first brain food, right? Which was literally something you can, that kind of geared towards females, but help you prevent, these diseases that, once you find out you have it, it's hard to reverse it. And that's better for you, right? And it's lower sugar. It's got, higher protein content. I think that that's going to happen at a much faster pace, but it's not going to have this bubble that just burst because everyone is trying to do it. It's your body, right? None of us are going to live forever, but we want to live as long as we can. And if you can capture, whatever your definition of health is early on, it doesn't just help your physical body, it helps your mental state. And I'm experiencing that as a 45-year-old with a 1.5-month-old son. I'm getting my ass kicked, right? But there's changes that I can make in my life to give me, a little bit better chance of making it through the day. So yeah, I think that those are going to be trends that are here forever, right? Hopefully pickleball will not be. But it's been fun. And just to see how it's becoming a conversation that's woven into just two dudes having lunch, right? We invest in a place called Alive and Well. It's a better for you holistic medicine. If you'd have told me this 10 years ago, I would have laughed at you, right? I would have been like, what kind of goo? It's crazy. And I went and got my cortisol levels checked. And I'm just like, these things that it's normal, right? And your yearly physical is there's more to it now. So it's exciting. And it's exciting to be on the other side of it. And for Dallas to be a true epicenter for this movement, where this is a city of vanity, right? But that's okay because we're going to see it. This is Beverly Hills meets New York City meets Chicago meets Miami, right here. And we have all of those trends happening in real time. And the only way to make it happen faster is to be in this neighborhood. as you see it. So yeah, I'm excited about the future of it. I'm excited to see, the sustainability movement be widespread, but also be long-term.
Well, thanks, Roger, so much. And thanks all for joining us. And if you want to find out more about how you can join us for these conversations, as well as our April event, please visit earthx.org, sign up for our newsletter. And appreciate it so much.
Yeah. Hi, Britney Spears.